Hi guys, welcome to this video where we're going to talk about SPA architecture. I've been in this industry many years, and if I could go back 10 years and teach myself this, I would learn a wealth of knowledge and build a lot more sturdier applications. And I'm hoping that this will add so much value that you can build applications faster. So could you afford not to miss all of this experience being gathered up and put into this video? If you want to go ahead and get loads of free content, loads of awesome assets, cheat sheets, and loads of free resources, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit the ding dong bell so you get notifications, and also what I'd like you to do is join the Avelx mailing list and give us a big thumbs up. Now let's get on with the video. Well, how are SPAs being built wrong, I hear you ask? Well, first of all, there's too much of this. I want to use the application state. This is normally Flux or Vuex in Vue. And then you also have the modularity. Now, people get these bits confused with each other. SPAs are built to be modular for one reason: to build out a user interface quickly. However, that does not mean your data has to be a complete modular mess. I've seen this in many companies where they think that the modularity of a user interface should also be brought into the modularity of data. And in some cases that's correct, but in other cases that is incorrect. There are a few things you need to spot. The first one is if there is no clear application flow. If I can't see the flow, I don't want to know. Applications with a one-way flow are incredibly important because you have multiple people on these front ends and they need to know where the data is coming from and where the data is coming to. And if you make it modular enough and clear enough, it will work. And if you use the application state to its fullest. What people don't seem to understand is SPAs are long-lived. So any problems you create will be long-lived. So everything has to be written to a certain level of excellency, more so than traditional websites. Because traditional websites, you click, it loads a page, then it gets rid of the page by the next time you click. You get a fresh application each time you click. Not with SPA. SPA, every time you click, it's the same application loading in different data. And the framework is helping us to put things together, or a library in the case of React. And that's great, but you can still make some terrible mistakes with your data structuring. So don't think of SPAs as a way to modularize your data. Think of them as a way to modularize your user interface. If something needs to sit in the application data, make it sit in the application data. How do you determine what sits in the application data? Well, it's very simple. If I can flow it one way, then it would usually be great. Now, one of my arch nemesis is the event bus, and this is a good case and example of over-modularizing data. So, take this example where we have many components, all with different names, but it doesn't matter what name they are. And I have an event bus listener somewhere inside of my application. I'm listening for an event somewhere in my application, and any one of my subcomponents is actually pushing the content up and then listening to that event bus. Number one, do I understand where the event bus is? Well, if I was brand new to the project, no, I wouldn't. Two, which subcomponent is pushing the data up? Is there a log of this? Is there any further debugging information? Is this the right way to go about this? The answer is no. Now, I worked on a project that was Vue Storefront, the first version of Vue Storefront, and it was a nightmare to work on because they overutilized event buses. They way over-engineered it. They made it so complicated that you wouldn't know where the data came from and where the data went. And then when the data gets there, where does that data go? Then I have to read a whole nother set of functions. Now, if I understand Vue, for example, I would know if it was in the application state that Vuex would be the event listener. That's where we would dispatch events to. And we would know which component dispatched that event because that would go to the Vuex store, and the Vuex store would log which component, and I've got debugging tools and I can see the data. Also, I would naturally look there for things that I believe should be in application state. That data can then be fed back down into the application, a one-way application flow, where you have potentially many events from many different components going into the application state, and the application state delivers it to the application. I know where the data is going, I know where the data came from, and I know where the data is being stored. It's stored in the application state. So not only will you have your actions, you'll have your mutations. That tells me how the data is being entered into the state. Yes, it can be a little bit more complex, but no, it is not inflexible, and no, it's not complicated. Why? Because if you get new people on the project, they're not interested in all these event buses and event listeners. Sometimes people make interfaces so modular and the data that they want to pass it up the chain about 3 or 4 times and pass it back down the chain 3 or 4 times. This is ridiculous. This should be the thing that you should say, this needs to live in an application state. Simplify, flatten. If you've got properties that are passed up 4 or 5 times and passed down 4 or 5 times, that's the time to rethink, remodel what you're doing there, because what you're doing there is creating unnecessary steps. Then people do something even worse than that. What they do is they use events and event buses. And the problem is, yes, Vuex is an event sort of driven thing. Your application will be driven by events, but they're not clear and concise. So people say, well, I'm passing this property up 4 times and I'm passing this property down 4 times. So what I should do is create an event that bubbles up. So basically they're trying to make an application state without using the proper framework tools like Flux and Vuex. This is a nightmare. This is not how you write SPA. The reason why we don't do this is because it's very complicated. It's over complex. I don't understand where the data is coming from, and I don't understand where the data is going to. This is where we need to adopt the solution. And I'm going to hear you ask, well, it's simple. One-way application flow. And I want you to remember this saying, if it's not one way, I don't want to know. It's always got to be one way. And there always is a one-way solution to everything that you do. And even though that costs you time, and this is what they're really paying for, is your brain power, you know, you owe it to whoever's employing you to make this solution as simple as possible, and for your team and your team of people. The simpler you make your application flow, the quicker people can actually get on with the bit that they want to be doing, which is coding. Also, the beauty about one-way application flows, I've not got loads of events all over the place. I don't have to discover things and search for code. If I have to go to the search feature in an application, that tells me that this thing isn't actually built correctly, because I should know where that data should be. I should know roughly where to look. All right, I still may use the search feature, but I know roughly what folder to search, what items I'm looking for. So it's the one-way application flow that makes your application robust. You can add to your modularity, you can add to your structure, you can add to your flow without damaging, ultimately, the understanding, the simplicity that should be written in your SPA. If it's not, something is wrong. So take, for example, if I had event buses everywhere, now I transition those events and I put it into the application state. The application state can monitor which component it came from. I can look at the actions that were dispatched. I can look at how that affected the state. I can look at the mutations that affected the state. Everything is logged. Everything is clear. There's nothing that you can't do with this. It's very simplistic. The correct application flow is this. Whenever you have a data service layer or a DSL, it's called your backend, right? Your backend engineers. Your backend engineers are serving you data, right? So You want to mirror this back-end data in your application state. I mean mirror it. Whatever you get from these endpoints, mirror that in your Vuex state. And you'll come to see why this is correct later on. Then, once you've mirrored your application state compared to the backend, you're creating that mirror, which ultimately makes it simplistic for anybody to understand the data, even your backend engineers. You can ask for support and they go, right, that's the state. Oh, that's mirroring what we're doing on our server side. Excellent. Front end, server side, mirrored. Now you're probably going, well, we need to be more functional than that, Lawrence. We need to be more modular. Yes, your user interface needs to be broke down. Your user interface needs to be very modular because that's how you build fast user interfaces with consistency. However, what you don't want to be doing is making that data understandable for any engineer to understand. I should be able to go to a backend engineer and immediately recognizes his data in my front end. And then you can say, well, how do we be more modular? How do we be more functional? It's very simple. What you do is you get the mirrored data and then you be more functional with it on the UI layer. You see, a lot of people think that what you have to do with the application state is you have to modify or keep using the application state. No, you don't. You can pull the data down and be more functional on your component level. So take, for example, I have a cart and coupons on the back end, and I've mirrored that cart and coupons in my application layer. Now, when I'm building out my user interface, particularly the cart section, when the user opens up the cart, I can get all the cart data and I can also get the coupon data or trigger the coupon data to trigger the endpoint. So that if they've added certain items to the cart, then they're going to get a certain discount, or if they've got a certain volume, they're going to get some money off. Okay, well that's excellent. But guess what I've done now? I've created something called a pattern, a parallel pattern, in which I can now introduce sockets. Because with live applications, I'm talking applications where you don't need to trigger events from your components. You can actually have the server side trigger the events automatically using sockets. So what that means is, as soon as I add an item to the cart, and that will add it to the backend REST API point for that user, the REST API goes, oh, you've added a new item to the cart. Sockets immediately pulls that down into your cart state in Vuex because I mirrored it. That will then automatically allow the reactivity of your Vue or React or whatever front end you've got to immediately render that item in the cart. I don't have to do anything. It's a one-way application flow. And then on top of that, when we add to cart on the DSL or the data service layer, the backend layer, the backend layer can go, oh, he's added something to the cart. Let's see if they have a discount. Let's check to see if they have a discount. You can do this all on the backend now. So now the backend talks to the coupon API and says, well, coupon API, do they have a coupon? Yes, they do. Guess what? That one-way application flow, beautiful again, comes right back down, straight into the coupon bucket, straight into the coupon application state of Vuex or Flux, and then immediately that's rendered to the cart. I mean, it's a one-way application flow. This is the structure that we need. We need to stop with all these event buses and having components where you're saying, well, I can't be asked to take this property, this data, and pass it up 4 times and then pass it back down 4 times. So I've got events that go up and then I've got this that goes down. And then to save me time, I'm just going to cut all that out. And then I'm going to have this component randomly talk to this component and then send it up. It's kind of like taking a ball, chucking it up and saying, how high will it go? Well, I don't really know. All right, if I know the strength and the weight and the size, I've got to do all this mathematical work. Yeah, sure, eventually you'll know where the ball will land. But that takes a lot of work. This one-way application flow takes a hell of a lot less work. And even though you may not have sockets now or live interactivity now, this is where applications are going. And you want to set yourself up so that you could do that one day. So when you mirror the DSL layer in your application state, in your SPA front end, which will be Vuex or Flux, you will actually be able to have live connectivity, live reactivity from the back end to the front end, and all your SPA technology will actually live together. As I said, whenever you create these problems, guys, you're in a long-lived application. Long-lived applications equals long-lived problems. That goes for front end and back end. Node.js is a long-lived application where we run JavaScript on the server side. You start writing problems in here, guys, it will get worse. The beauty about long-lived applications is you have to be structured. You have to be regimental. Plus, if you start making event listeners everywhere, what you could end up with is what we know as memory leaks. When you create a component that listens for an event, and if you don't correctly remove that event before that component is unrendered, you will create memory leaks. I've already worked on SPAs that were an absolute nightmare, that were fully event-driven, not really thought well out, and there was about 100 megabyte leak in nearly everything that was there. The mobile menu was 35 megabytes, and just by flattening and simplifying the interface, I got rid of a huge memory leak in the mobile menu. I got rid of a huge memory leak in the page rendering, and this needs to be done, folks. It's not a question of maybe we could do it. It needs to be done because you're going to suffer if you don't. Plus, if you need some kind of calculation or functional thing, then make that component functional. So if the component needs to work out the car items and the coupons for some reason, it wants to work out the tax, then what would happen is, in that component that tells them how much tax they're going to pay, it would grab the application layer of the cart, it would grab the coupon code, minus the coupon code from the cart total, and then give you the tax. And you don't have to change the application state to do that. You can be purely functional when rendering your content. Always think about, when you're in this modular user interface, be as functional as possible. When you're in the application state, you want to mirror as much as possible of what is coming above you. Let that which is above you dictate what is coming to you below, because that means that you can create a better one-way flow and, of course, relinquish a lot of the responsibilities that SPA engineers are putting on themselves today. So, what are you going to ask me next? The way you write a perfect application model is like this. The backend will dictate your application state, and you want to mirror them as closely as possible. Now, don't get me wrong, some things in your application state you can extend. You can add onto your application state. But the crux is that whatever's on your DSL layer, your data service layer, whether that be Magento or Shopware or whatever it is, when it comes down, I'm mirroring that application state. Okay? And then I can have a few other modules. If I want to extend something, if I want to make something different, then don't modify that. Create a new module for that. That's a new module. Modularize so that it mirrors, but also allows you the flexibility in your application state if there's something you want to combine or do or work with. Excellent. Let the application state feed, guide, but look at it as a guide. Okay, what a lot of people do when making mistakes with this is they don't look at Vuex as guiding or the Flux state as guiding the application. You shouldn't have every operation, every alteration on the application state. It's just guiding you in that direction. Then it's coming back. And if you do have live socket connectivity, then you know where the one-way flow comes from. You've got the back end and then it immediately comes back down. And if you wanted to know where that came from, all I have to do is look in the network tab of the actual developer tools, and I will be able to see what is triggering it and where it came from and so forth. And then I go, aha, that's where it came from. But I also know that the data coming down is consistent, is the same. And then when I take that application flow as a guide, as a path, it's a guide, I can branch off that path wherever I need to and be more modular and more functional in my user interface. When it comes to your user interface, break it down into very small pieces. Be modular. And when you need to work with that application state, try to modify it as little as possible. If you can just work out that value, then work it out. Don't write necessarily back up to the application state. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. You can be more functional. So learn where to enhance functionality and learn where to decrease functionality. And if you build this properly, you will create a proper application state that's replicated. So you can replicate it across clients. You can update it across clients and your components as well. All right, guys, so if you want tons of free content, loads and loads of knowledge and all this knowledge popping out my head into yours, then hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We've got loads of stuff on avelx.co.uk. You can sign up to the newsletter, you can sign up to the academy, and you can also have the push notifications. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers, guys. And here is another video which I think will be of interest.